Finding empowerment, embracing layers, yeah. We get to feel.
Hello, F.E.E.L Podcast. Welcome back today. I'm your host, Melissa Crook. I've got a friend here that if you listen to our radio show in 2024, you have heard this friend speak. And I've been trying to get her on the podcast for a while, and I moved and we just had a lot of moving parts going on in our lives, but I follow her and she puts things up every once in a while. Well, she puts things up and I catch them. I'm like, oh, I got to reach out to her. And I finally got around to doing that and getting her on this platform. She is wise beyond her years. She's got a whole life full of knowledge to already share at this point in her life. She's courageous. She's insightful. Those are my words for her. And those are the things I see in her, but I'm going to introduce you to her by her character traits, which are chronically curious, which I love so much. We're going to get into that more. Not afraid of liminal spaces. She's not afraid of the gray. And when you hear her background and what she's come from, what she's learned, what she's survived, what she's redefined for herself, that's going to make a lot more sense to you. You're going to understand the value of that. And this is so good. This is what I mean about her wisdom. She is interested in people's stories, not their filters, including her own. I'm like, ooh, sit with that for a minute. Kellyanne Carter, welcome to the F.E.E.L Podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Good. Well, I met Kellyanne initially because she and a couple of friends have the Woman Being podcast, and it's a very, very important podcast, especially if you're someone, it's for everybody. There's something in it for everyone, but for someone who's come out of very damaging, hurtful, harmful religious spaces, faith spaces with some scars and some wounds and just some realizations. There's great content within that, and they have really real honest conversations about that. But there's so much more to Kellyanne than that, and what she's learned about herself and what she has to offer. And we're going to get into all that today. Talk to me to start with about your journey with self-care.
Yeah. Thank you so much for creating so much space to talk about self-care, because it really is everything. Mm-hmm. I had to learn self-care. I was essentially conditioned to not care for myself. It was about caring for everyone else, right? About the community. And so, when I had my own mental health struggles in my early 20s, I had to figure out what that means. And so self-care came because my body demanded it of me, actually. It said, you haven't taken care of me for a long time, and it's time for you to do that. Mm-hmm. And so I like to tell people that you can address your feelings and your trauma on your terms or your body's terms. And you don't want it to become your body's terms, because it can be really hard. And that was my introduction to what self-care is. And I'm still to this day learning the difference between giving yourself what you need to thrive and actually caring for yourself. Right? There's a difference between, I'm going to chug water because I know I need to stay hydrated, and, I'm actually going to sit with myself as I drink my water, right? That's a different headspace. And so I would say my journey has been demanded of me for my self-care, and then moving into the more somatic spaces, now understanding that, the way we experience the world is through our bodies. And so much of that comes down to, can you enjoy? Can you find pleasure? Can you, it's the older I get, the more I'm like, the cliches are true. Stop and smell the roses, right? Can you actually stop and smell the flowers? Can you actually be present with yourself? And that is kind of a summarization of how my self-care journey began and is still ongoing. I really think, we have a phrase in the somatic world of what fires together wires together, meaning those neurotransmitters, as they're firing, they're creating pathways in your nervous system. And so like, I think I will have a long journey with continuing to choose myself. And that's okay. That's just part of it.
Yeah, it is a journey. And I think that's an important distinction, because I know when I started my journey, and I started it a lot later than you did in life, but I had this idea, I'm going to go in, I'm going to do this for 6 months, and I'm going to move on with my life. And that's how it's going to be. And it was like, oh, no. That is not how it's going to be. This is just the beginning. And that was a stark realization, but I think approaching it, going back to your, being chronically curious and continuing to learn and evolve and grow and realize that that's what this is. And it's continuing to check in with yourself. You said something so important. I can drink my water, and I should. It's right here. Also, can I sit down and drink my water mindfully? Can I make sure I'm breathing deeply? Can I give myself 10 minutes of quiet while I drink my water to let everything settle, to let my system reset? And so it's not just about the physical manifestations of moving your body and drinking your water. What am I doing for myself to fulfill myself spiritually, mentally, emotionally, my sexual health? I mean, when you come from very conservative faith spaces, which you and I both have a history of, I got a handle on mine a lot later in life than you did. And the impacts of that, there's like, you do this, you do this, you do this. This is right. This is wrong. We don't talk about this. We do talk about this. If you do, and if you want to talk about this, then that you're bad, dirty, too curious, being tempted by the devil, whatever it is, whatever manifestation of that is. And so the first time when you feel like you've got the freedom to really be curious and you stop disassociating with your body and start actually paying attention to what she's telling you, it's really like, oh, wow. Okay. We're going to get more into the somatic piece in a minute, because that's something that's so important, such an important part of your journey. And for me, I didn't even know that was a part of my journey until I was able to settle enough and just come out of my disassociation to feel. And I remember when I first started therapy in the fall of 2019, for probably the first year to year and a half, I had all of these areas of numbness and tightness that I kept trying to get a medical diagnosis for, that there was like, there's nothing physically wrong with you. It was literally my body. Okay, my nervous system's feeling safe enough, but now we got to move through all this stuff, and we got to move it out of our bodies, and we got to process it. So it's such a stark reality to realize, oh, wow, I was just like scratching the surface with my drinking my water and getting my run in and eating some healthy food. There's so many more layers to that. And we're going to get to that. But before we get into that, a mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, sexual health manifestation and how the somatic work really ties into that, I want to talk to you about confidently setting boundaries. Boundaries are a whole other new, I think, iteration when you realize, oh my gosh, the access and control that you've allowed others to speak into you throughout your life, because that's what you were taught. That's what you knew. That's what you were told was good. And then all of a sudden realizing what's not serving you and having to create, healthy boundaries around what you will and won't allow access in and out, who gets access. All of those things become a very new, how you prioritize yourself to make sure there's space for you and all this. That it's a lie that putting yourself first is selfish, because if we don't do that, then we will come in depleted and half of ourselves and not fully refreshed and authentic from a full cup, from a full container to show up as first for ourselves and of course for the people around us that we're in relationship with. Everyone benefits when we fill our cup. So this backwards idea and how much that's still being taught is really interesting once you get on the other side of it. But talk to me about your boundaries journey.
Yeah. I identify as a recovering people pleaser. And so boundaries, very similar to the self-care. It's been a huge process for me. I've been thinking a lot recently, actually, about the fawn response. And personally, I identify as, in my experience, my people pleasing is a fawn response. So it is a survival tactic that I implemented when I was young to make it through the extreme experiences I had. And so when you look at it that way, like, survival tactics aren't good or bad. It's your nervous system prioritizing your well-being and your survival. And that is as it should be. And recognizing, hey, I'm in a safer space. Hey, I actually am okay. I can set this down. And the process of setting down people pleasing to pick up boundaries can feel really unsafe because it's new territory. And so you might have to say, like me, hey, I'm so sorry, I can't make it to this event, but I love you. That can feel so scary because it's new territory. And I don't know about your brain. My brain will race and just be like, oh my gosh, this person hates me now, which is that fawn. Like, if I can prevent or guarantee a specific outcome, that guarantees my safety.
Yeah.
And so that is that self-care piece. I think that's foundational so that you can have boundaries, so that you can build that up. And I'm learning still, who do I let into my life? How do I let them into my life? Am I comfortable saying thank you so much and no thank you? And am I safe in myself with those boundaries? Because when you violate your boundaries, or your boundaries are violated, I feel a very physical response. I feel it in my belly. I start to get antsy. I start to feel angry or taken advantage of. And so my body will start to tell me when I'm stepping over the line or allowing someone to step over my lines. And there is a rebuilding of trust that has to happen with yourself. You have to be, your body has to trust that you will do the, like, quote unquote harder thing in order to take care of you. And once those two things come into alignment, I think that's really where the magic happens. I wouldn't say I am fully, like, in that space yet. I get glimmers of it. I'm like, oh, I feel free. Oh, I feel so empowered. I feel so good. Like, life might be crazy right now, or this might still be a wild situation, but I feel good in the midst of it. And I think that is everything. Like, setting a boundary and being able to feel secure in yourself, I think, is the magic, because then it doesn't really matter what the response is to the boundary. What matters is what you feel and how you feel like you advocated for yourself, and that you can trust yourself to step up.
Yeah. I think you said so many important things there. I think that a realization, I think when you start setting boundaries, you have to make a deal with yourself. I'm never going to abandon myself again. That doesn't mean you won't, but that's the kind of the light that keeps you guiding. And the question to ask yourself, am I abandoning myself here or not? That safety piece is so huge, because when you've been hearing your whole life that don't trust your body will lead you astray, don't trust your instincts, the sinful nature, all those things, you have to, like, learn to, like, no, actually, she was designed to let me know what's happening, and that safety piece, because I had to go through a span of time of, like, hypervigilance was my thing. I'm like, thank you so much for keeping me safe. You kept me safe for years, and I needed you, and I'm so thankful, but I'm safe now. I've got this. And so for me, it was a lot of inner child work and talking to myself and letting myself know, I've got this now. I'm aware. I'm not disassociated anymore, and I'm going to keep us safe. Thanks for how you served me, but we're stepping away, because it will feel very uncomfortable. And sometimes people mistake that discomfort, meaning that they think they're doing something wrong. And it's like, no, our nervous system equates safety and familiarity. And so we have to like retrain, like we need to do a new familiar now because this old familiar is not serving us anymore. So stay with me here. So I think that's something really important to you. You said, whatever anybody else's response is, how do I feel? Did I honor myself? Because I feel I am such a somatic feeler, like it's in my chest, it's in my tone of voice, my irritability. I feel like I'm being a martyr. I feel like I'm taken advantage of. I feel like I'm being, I don't have any agency. I mean, all those are the things that fire up. And so recognizing that, I mean, is as many things as have changed since I did my work. I feel more settled and more content. And yet there's still triggers. There's still things that come up. They're like, I call it layers. There's another layer there to peel back. There's still something, going on there that needs to be dealt with. So that acceptance that it's a lifelong thing, but staying with that and trusting that. But I love that you talked about the safety and the trust and the retraining and letting your nervous system know and just having those conversations. And it's like, I laughed. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here I always talk to myself, but this is like a whole new level. But I think it's such an important reminder of that ability we have within us already. We are capable of so much more within us. We have it all there. It's just, I think, feeling the freedom and safety and support and trust to access it. And that's really the journey that you've been on. So I love that and that continual learning piece. All right. Taking care of our emotional health, our physical health, our mental health, spiritual health, sexual health, all those pieces are a part of the puzzle. It's a huge part of your focus and what you're passionate about now with the somatic work. But talk to me about your journey in the recognition of that, because there was a path you had to go down to get to this space of realizing, oh, this is a space that I want to land in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, thank you so much for asking the question. I love talking about this. So, I mean, like I mentioned earlier, my body demanded that I step away. Well, first that I get mental health support. And then my body, often I say, my body decided to leave religion. I did not decide. Like my body stepped up and said, you've had enough. Actually, physically couldn't pray. Like my throat would close up. Anytime I heard a worship song, I would start to cry. My body was screaming at me. And so, for me, it went in the process of once I left, the emotional fallout, I was a mess, had to be a mess. Yeah. Shortly after that, followed physical fallout and learning my body. It is very common for people that go through religious trauma. I mean, really any kind of trauma or abuse and once you start to heal that nervous system and recover, to actually have a fallout of health problems. That is my reality right now. So I've dealt with a couple chronic illnesses. And so even now, like deciding, hey, this doctor isn't working for me anymore, I'm going for a new one. I'm going to push for the blood work that they are telling me I don't need, because I don't care if I don't need it. I want to make sure that that isn't what's happening. Right. So leaning into that really hard. And then, so that's been my journey for a handful of years. And that, some of the chronic pain that I was in led me to somatic work, because I was at the end of my rope. I didn't care. Like if you told me to jump in a circle and then sing happy birthday, I would try it if you told me it would help me be 10% in less pain. And fell for an Instagram ad. And I'm so glad that I did, because I bought this little $30 package for an emotional, like jaw and neck release. And I tried it and literally within a few minutes started feeling better. And that was my moment of I need to know everything about this. If this can take me from on the verge of tears and not being able to like move to, I can probably go about my day. Like that is a night and day difference when you experience chronic illness. And so that is what started it. I think it was 3 years ago now. And I went and found a school. I got into this somatic program, got certified as a somatic practitioner. I then went and got certified in nonlinear movement, which is now what I teach locally. And I love it. It's such a safe way to experience your body and explore your emotional landscape, especially when you're coming out of trauma or a high control religion, because it's gentle and it's at your own pace. And I'm currently working on a certification in somatic exercises, which is the first thing that I found when I've had my jaw feeling better. And I was like, I need to know everything that I possibly can about somatics. And so now I am all things embodied trauma processing. Like because I needed it myself. Yeah. And I know that everyone else needs it too. We are not taught to like, lean into our bodies and see how we're feeling and, let your body move and how it needs to move. And that will help you process your emotions. We're not taught that. We live very cognitively, and there's nothing wrong with your cognitive brain, nothing at all. But it's estimated that 70% of the information we process every day comes from the body up, and only 30% is brain down. And so our bodies are talking to us all day, and we don't listen to them. And that's where I found I needed to start listening to my body. So that's a little bit of my emotional health, my mental health, my physical health journey, and still ongoing. And, I'm okay with that. I abandoned, we were talking about abandoning ourselves. I abandoned myself for a long time. And so I'm okay taking the time and the effort to get myself back to myself, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, that authentic state of being, how you were designed to exist, and not this other way that you morphed into to survive this system that you were in. Because these are systems, and I'm so, we're starting to talk about the somatic more. I switched over to a more holistic practitioner in 2017 because I wanted to start knowing why things were happening. Not just throwing a Band-Aid at it, but getting all of these systems to talk to each other, these systems in our culture, but also our systems are all connected in our body. So, you talked about the chronic, you hear time and time again from people, and women especially, of ending up with these different chronic disorders, whether it's autoimmune or otherwise, because of these, and it's that physical manifestation. I mean, we had a guest on who her now ex-husband was a pastor, and he was very abusive to her, and she ended up leaving him, but she had to put on that face for so many years. And she ended up with a very chronic, very difficult, health issue around autoimmune that she had to deal with. It ended up being rheumatoid arthritis is how it manifested in her. And very painful, very difficult. But when she was able to get herself in a safe space and make that connection, she was able to, these things take time. Our bodies, I think that we don't talk about enough, the fact that our bodies are not designed to carry all of this. There has to be a release. And if we don't provide space and time and mechanisms for that release, it will show up in a very, mine ended up in the ER twice in a 10-day period in 2019. Yours was what happened to you in your 20s. But, the reason I'm so passionate about talking about these things and making sure women have these resources is if you are in this space, we can help you. And also we have things that can help you. You don't have to be in that space anymore, or you don't have to get to that space, period. So let's give you some tools and some resources and frameworks to free you to live the way you were designed to live. But yeah, and I think it's just so important, that patience and time. I mean, I remember my therapist telling me, she's like, it took you a good portion of your 50 years to get here. This is not going to just work itself out in 6 months or a year. This is going to be a lifetime, because things don't expose themselves until it feels like there's safety and room for you to move through them. So that means you're going to peel back some layers, you're going to heal and process and move through some areas, and something else is going to show itself. And, and because and it might have to be that you're in certain situations for that thing to come up. I mean, you just don't know. I mean, and I think that I think when you can accept that piece of it, and know that you've got the tools and resources to walk that out, that makes all the difference in the world too.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Having tools in your tool belt is everything, because those tools are validation. Those tools inherently give you an outlet, like whatever it is, right? Because everyone's different and everyone's journey is different. For me, it's all things somatics, right? For other people, they might have way other different tools and pieces that support them, but you can only get there if you know yourself. Yeah. If you know yourself and you know what you need.
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up, because that, again, we'll get to it when we get to the talking point, but also that knowing yourself. When I sit down with women, and we'll wrap our conversation up with this today, but when I'm working with groups or one-on-one, we start with, okay, first thing we're going to talk about is your layers. We're going to talk about all those pieces and parts that make up your story. And we're going to talk about getting curious rather than judgmental. And we're going to embrace those things that you've got shame around, that you're embarrassed about, that you wish hadn't happened. And we're going to reframe the way, we're going to bring them out from hiding, and we're going to reframe the way you're addressing them. Because that is how you're able to, and you're not going to love them all. That's not the point, but to be able to acknowledge them and be like, given the time I was in, given what I knew then, given the examples around me, given who was speaking into my life, all those things, I get why I did that, or I get why I made that decision, or I get why I didn't say no to that, or I understand that. I don't love it. I won't do it again. But I can see how that is the direction I ended up going. And just even getting to that neutral space of being able to embrace your layers. And then I'm like, all right, let's name 5 activities that nourish you. Are you engaging in any of those things? Are you connecting to yourself in any of those ways? And sometimes it takes a while. Like, I'm going to be releasing by the time you guys hear this episode, you will have known that I released an online course this summer. And I decided that was the next iteration, because I wanted women to really have time to sit with these things. And I mean, we have the podcast, we have a panel show, we have our book, and our book is a good step in that too. But and I can come speak to you in person, but those things are all things that happen over a day or a weekend or a time or a few weeks. With the online course, you can sit with that and be really intentional and give yourself all the time and space you need. So I'm very conscientious about, all right, it might take you a minute, it might take you a day or a week to identify those 5 activities that nourish you, because you've been so wrapped up and engaged with making sure everyone else is okay and taken care of that you don't even know for sure what that is for you. I've literally have women tell me when I ask them, I'm like, I don't know. I've never thought about that. No one's ever asked me that question. So, what feeds your soul? What lights you up? What are those activities that nourish you? And then thinking about those 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months. So being able to identify your character trait, and those things allow you to know yourself. Then you can come in knowing yourself, meet yourself where you are. And that's what Kellyanne's talking about here. And it's those intentional time and investing in yourself and knowing that you're worth it and you're worth the time and the investment, and discarding the voices and lies that have told you that is selfish and self-serving. It is serving you, and it is serving everyone around you, because you're finally engaging in your life in a way that's authentic to who you were designed to be. And that makes you healthier with yourself and in all your relationships. And how do we want people to perceive us? We don't want the irritable martyr, half present, half not, wore out version of someone. We want their fully authentic, refreshed, present version who knows who they are. And I think there's just, and so I went into that because I think sometimes when people are like, oh, I think I know myself, I challenge you to test that knowledge with yourself and ask yourself those key questions, because that's going to really give you, and you got to revisit them, like continue to know yourself. Different seasons are going to change, relationships change, all these things happen to us, jobs change, locations. So continue to visit that. But I'm so glad you brought up that intentionality, because you can't properly serve or take care of someone you don't know in the way they need. Mm-hmm. And that includes you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think you put it so perfectly.
Yeah. And so the fact that you were able to do that, and I think this is what now allows you to show up for yourself and others unapologetically. Talk about that more.
Yeah. Gosh, I think it was late last year. I kind of had this epiphany, like it's such a thing on social media now of like entering my villain era, right? Or like, like main character energy. And I just like this thought just like dropped in to not just my head, but my body. I felt it. And it was like, I should be the main character of my story, actually. Yeah. Like
all the time.
It just lit me up. And I was like, yeah, I love my husband more than anything, except for myself. I have to love myself first. I have to be the main character, and I can't center him in my life, because guess what? That's me putting my past trauma on my married relationship now that doesn't deserve it. I don't deserve it. He doesn't deserve it. That doesn't need to be a piece, or like my friends, my family, love them all, would do just about anything for them other than now sacrifice myself, because like, then I'm not living my life. I'm living their life.
Yeah.
I'm living everyone else's expectation of what I should look like, or at least my interpretation of it.
Right.
And that is not my authenticity. That's not their authenticity, right? That's me projecting what I think they want or what I think they need onto them, and then orienting myself accordingly. And I will say that is one, it's simpler work, right? Like it's simple to be like, okay, all of this chaos, cut that out. Just calm down.
Yeah.
Calm down, give yourself some breathing room. But it's deeper work. It is hard. I don't know why it's so hard for us as women, to choose ourselves. Call it conditioning, upbringing, whatever survival tactics or coping strategies you needed. And those are all valid. Like, those are all completely valid. And again, like we talked about earlier, I can set that down now. I don't need that. And the people in my life that love me, they don't want that for me either. Right.
Right. And if they do want that for you, then you need to look at that relationship. And because
for sure,
it goes going back to the boundaries piece. I love what you said in speaking about your husband specifically, because we hear a lot of stuff about the husband and wife relationship in these spaces. A relationship, if you need a relationship, that's a red flag. Because it is no one else's responsibility to fulfill you. It needs to be a choice. They add to your happiness 1,000%. But I want to brag on my husband a little bit, because we both came from our own shit show backgrounds, but he did have the wisdom to know when we were, in our early 20s in college, and we had been dating for a while. And really surprisingly to me, he's like, I need to break up with you not because I don't love you, but because I need you to not need me. And it blew my world up. Ended up being the best way possible but that was the hardest 9 months of my life. We were broke up for 9 months. At the time we got back together, I didn't see that coming. Yeah, but it essentially it was the first time I went to therapy. It took me round 3 to really dive in, but that was the first round of really the first time anyone ever told me what you experienced was abuse. What happened to you was trauma. And I was just like, whoa, mind blown. But it also was one of those things where I had to learn to be okay with me. I had to learn to love me. I had to learn to realize I didn't need a man. I didn't need another person. I was completely capable of taking care of and fulfilling me. And then that would allow me to show up in that relationship authentically and not put that pressure on the other person to feel like they were responsible for me and my happiness and my well-being. And so I went on, that was chapter 1 of this iteration of myself. And it was when I really walked away from that first round of, I grew up Mormon, left that, went into the evangelical space later. That did feel freer for many years. Mm-hmm. And then ended up, leaving that space in 2020. But it was that, for him to have the wisdom to say that to me. And it was hard. Like on both of us, it was very hard. It was a long slog. And then about the time I thought, I was getting ready to graduate. I was looking for jobs in other cities. I was getting ready to get in my own apartment. And he showed up at my door one day, and we had enough, contacts in space that he'd been able to kind of observe from afar that I'd taken these steps and it was really moving forward. And so he knocked on the door. It was the first week of summer school. I needed to get some summer school done before I could officially be done. And I opened the door, but then I had why are you here? And what is your investment? And I'm not going to move forward with this, without, some kind of and he was like, wow, you really have done the work. I'm like, I love you, but I don't need you. And I'll be okay and I'll get over this and I'll be okay without you. And it's hurt like hell, but I know now that I can be okay. And that was such an important lesson for me to learn and change the whole trajectory of going into a marriage. And so I wanted to spend some time with that because I think it's so important that we understand the difference between needing and wanting and the choice that exists within our relationships and the ability that we have to show up unapologetically for ourselves and how that takes the pressure off of a relationship when it was to be something it was never meant to be.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree. Me and my husband, we dated for 3 years and were engaged for a year before we got married, which in the evangelical space is unheard of.
Unheard of. And gets a lot of side eye.
Mm-hmm.
Because
so much side eye.
What's happening with them? What are, because, that's a whole.
No, 100%. No, people felt like they could ask any question under the sun they wanted to ask. And it was amazing, but amazing in many ways. But, that was part of it. I was like, I want to make sure, I'm not trying to rush into this. I'm not trying to repeat my own trauma patterns. And I'm very grateful because my husband, saw me in my mess that I didn't even know I had yet within the evangelical space and saw beyond that somehow. Yeah. And, you know, I always say the woman that he married is not the person that he has today. And I think that's okay. I think that's good, actually. But I think part of everyone is very ready and willing to tell you what they think a relationship should look like. And I think it's really important to trust your own integrity and trust your own gut on what you need for your relationship. Because when you do anything differently, honestly, you're kind of just doing stuff out of what you're afraid of, and I'm not perfect in this. I was not perfect at all. I made plenty of decisions out of fear, and somehow this all still worked out. Right. Yeah. But like when you are doing what you think it should be or what it should look like, especially when you're young, that can set you up on a weird path, you know, like you guys had 9 months apart. We did almost a year of long distance, which basically the same thing. Yeah. I feel like, and you know, we both came from pretty rough upbringings, and we did like a codependency course when we were like 20 and 18. We had no business.
You guys.
We had no business doing I don't even know what half of the words meant. And I don't even know if it really made a difference. But the fact that we were willing to sit there and listen to these dumb CDs that are saying a bunch of words that we don't really understand about psychology, you know, like I think it really set up our relationship and how we're able to push and pull on each other. And that same concept of like, I want you so bad. Like, I want you so bad. My bones hurt. And I know that I'm going to be okay with however this shakes out is I think really important. 'Cause like, I mean, eventually, right, one day, most of us will probably have to go without our spouse. And like having that self-love, that compassion, that courage, and, you know, your friends that will support you no matter what, right? Your support system. I think that's everything. And I don't know, I guess my final thought is like, don't have a relationship that everyone thinks you should have. Have the relationship that you need.
Yeah. Oh, that was good. That was so good. And trust those little inklings, because as much as I was disassociated, there were a few key decisions I made along the way where it was like, you know what? I just don't think that's right. I just don't see that. I just don't agree with that. I'm going to have to trust my gut on this one. There were a few that was what led me to, you know, continuing to date my husband and leave the Mormon church. I'm like, I just don't believe the BS that, you know, him not being Mormon makes him less than and not worthy of me marrying. I don't believe it. It's just, he's one of the best humans I've ever met in my life, and better than a lot of people that I know within this system that I'm in. So so even with all that was, you know, so it's going back to that. Don't ignore those nudges. Don't ignore that. It is there for a reason. It's there to let you know, and trusting those. And I think that it can be hard when you've been told not to, but also I look back at some of those key areas. It's easy to focus on the ones I didn't, but there are some key areas where I did, and it made all the difference. And so being willing to take that step forward. But thank you so much for that. I think that is, you know, when you talk about like, you know, the emotion that can be attached to it. Like, I love you so much. It hurts to think about not being without you. And also, I'm not going to die if you're not there, because I am capable and worthy and valuable, and I'll figure it out. So yeah, thank you so much for that. Oh, right. The importance of coming back to your why and your values. I would think for you coming to your conclusion on what those were for you had to play a big role in the decisions you were able to make.
Yeah. And it's hard sometimes. Like the process of coming back to means you have to acknowledge where you deviated from. Right.
Yeah.
And so like being gentle with yourself in the process. But yeah, I mean, learning what my values were was really interesting because it showed me why I didn't get along in certain areas of the church, right? Like where there's friction, it's probably pointing you to something about yourself. So for me, right, one of my biggest core values is liminality, which isn't a real word. I just made it one. The real word is liminal.
Yeah.
But I always was okay with not knowing. And it bothered me that the church felt they had so many specific answers that they couldn't possibly know. I'm like, but that's actually not in the Bible. How do you know that? Like, right. Yeah. And that really bothered me. And that was a rebbing point for me. So that was huge. Allowing people to have their own story. Like, you know, so much of, you know, sharing your testimony, we all knew there were good testimonies and not good testimonies, right? Yes. And we knew what the formula was to have a good testimony. And I didn't like that. I didn't like that filtering and polishing because that's not humanity. Like that's not people. I don't like it when people gatekeep information. I don't like it. It bothers me. It makes me feel like you're trying to control me and you're trying to control other people. And so I'm like, just be honest. That doesn't mean you have to share your deepest, darkest secrets. Actually, I think you should keep some of those to yourself. And that falls back to the boundary conversation, but living authentically. And being like transparent with what is truth or what is not truth or narrative or whatever, it allowing that to be is really important for me and my whys and my core values. And so I think it's really hard sometimes for us, just as people, to know this is what I stand for, and I didn't follow it. And can you forgive yourself? Can you accept that you are human? So you might not always follow what you stand for, but having the courage to come back. Like, actually, I have the courage to work with myself to reintegrate that piece and get back in alignment and pay the dues to myself and, if needed, to my community. Or whatever that looks like, right? That could be a spouse, that could be a friend, that could be a family member, whatever that looks like for you. And also, it doesn't have to. And I think that's the beauty of, for me, coming back to my why means coming back to what is my authenticity and what is my integrity, not this concept of what integrity is. We have like a very specific cultural understanding of what integrity means. Yeah. But for you, like you're in your DNA, in your guts, in your bones, what is integrous to you? Yeah. What allows you to sleep at night? What gives you peace? And to me, a lot of the deconstruction process, a lot of the recovery process, like recovering from trauma, all those things, it is that. It is, I'm okay loving myself through the process of getting back to myself and being okay with how my authenticity and how my integrity is perceived. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And this rolls perfectly into living out of your own expectations versus others, because that, when you deconstruct, it's a whole unraveling of that. It's looking at everything you've been told and unpacking what's actually true for you. So talk to me about that piece.
Yeah. Deconstruction for me was brutal because I didn't know myself. Who was Kellyanne? I couldn't tell you. I don't know what I liked. I didn't know what my dreams were. I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I didn't know any of those things. And so that piece of getting back to your integrity, you have to be okay with the discovery. You have to be okay with trying things on, seeing how they feel, seeing how they look, and deciding if you don't like it anymore. And eventually, as you exercise your voice, what you like, what you don't like, because that can be so overwhelming. And I'll get to that in a second. But that forges the way to get back to yourself. And you'll know when you are in your own integrity, when you are in your own authenticity, and when you're not. And that's why I think it's really important to try things on, right? To see how it feels. Does this feel right? Am I comfortable? Am I comfortable in a way that like I'm stretching myself? I'm pushing myself a little bit. I'm a little out of my comfort zone. Or do I feel icky?
Yeah.
Like if you feel icky, that's okay. You tried, set it down. Like that's totally fine. And I think there needs to be a little bit of a permission for that. I think people have a deep concern about being fake. There's a huge difference between wearing a mask, which I would say is more survival, but for the argument, we'll say fake, and trying, exploring, and you're okay to change your mind. That's such a huge piece. You're totally okay to change your mind. And we sometimes are pretty harsh on people that change their minds.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, why are we doing that? Like, because if we're not growing, if we're not getting closer to who we are as our own people, right? You've talked about pulling back layers. If we're not okay pulling back those layers and exposing deeper truths about ourselves or finding more of who we are, then like, what are we doing? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you brought up that piece of continuing to explore, because when you've been living off someone else's script that you've been told is the right script for you, you don't necessarily even know where to start because no one's ever asked you. You've not been given the choice. And so you do have to go through various iterations to kind of find what feels authentic to you and what aligns with you. And yeah, I think that, and I would say, when did you realize that you were chronically curious? Because evangelical religion spaces do not encourage curiosity. Like that is, being curious gets you in trouble, so to speak. So talk to me about how that played into this realization of what your expectations and how you wanted to show up in your life evolved.
Yeah. I love this question. I think the earliest memory I have of being like, oh, I was too curious was in, I think, first grade in Sunday school in my conservative United Methodist church. And I asked the Sunday school teacher the question, well, shouldn't we be grateful for Judas? Because if Judas hadn't betrayed Jesus, then he wouldn't have died for our sins in the first place, right? And they said, oh my gosh, stop talking. So that gives you a peek into, little Kellyanne's brain. I loved to ask the question. I loved to have that different perspective. I think that came out in my deep love of reading. I loved reading from a young age, and just anything and everything I could kind of get my hands on. Yeah. And so, I did 3 years of ministry school, and my third year I was a intern, and I interned for the main theology guy at our school. I was his first female intern. I was very proud of myself. Oh yeah. I also like to say I was born feminist. I loved to shatter ceilings anywhere I could. And I remember doing this research and doing this digging, we at the time, that was over, I want to say 9 years ago now. We did a lot of research on the LGBTQ topic and basically trying to prove why it's a sin. And I felt like there really wasn't room for much actual discussion and discovery and exploration. And I'm like, I researched for a year. I sat through many seminars and many classes, and I'm sorry, it's just not really in the Bible. Like, the more I dig, the more I'm like, what are we talking about here? And so that's, I think, when I realized, I don't think it fully landed cognitively yet.
Yeah.
But I realized that rubbing that I talked about, like that there's this roughness between me and this environment that doesn't fully mesh.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it started.
Okay.
And slowly I had to become more and more okay that I was the person that wasn't afraid to ask the question and point at the elephant in the room. And that can make people really uncomfortable.
Oh, yeah. Because there's a
can.
bad answer, and you are not to stray from that. And asking anything else or being curious about anything else, they've got all kinds of other names for you to go with that. Troublemaker, rebel rouser, whatever,
wolf in sheep's clothing.
Yes. Oh yeah. That's a favorite. Yeah. That's so interesting. I hear this and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't, there's so many things you're saying. I connect wholeheartedly with the LGBTQ piece because that just never added up for me, even from the time I was a kid, for 1,000 different reasons. And then I got married, and then I had family members that were part of that community that I loved, and they were some of the best people I'd ever met. I'm like, no, this just isn't right. This isn't adding up. The other piece that really rubbed me was the view of men and women in a marriage. And my husband and I were very, very, we are partners. No one's above the other one. And I mean, Brady would laugh when people would ask him about being the spiritual leader of the family. He's like, are you kidding me? Have you met her? I mean, she leads the way in everything. I mean, on that, she goes, and so I was really engaged. I was involved in women's ministry, all these things. And I found other ways to explain myself around, like, submission means like submit ideas like a book. Like, I found all these other ways to make it make sense for my brain, because I'm like, that's not how we live, nor does it feel right or authentic to us, nor would we ever engage with each other that way, or teach our daughters to seek out relationships where so there was always those rubbing of things where I was finding like, oh, I was getting these messages, but it's wrapped in so much fear of what's going to happen to you if. And it's not until that thing just butts up against you so hard where you just can't ignore it anymore. I'm like, I'm going to take a chance on this. I'm going to take a chance on me. And I'm going to trust all these signs and signals that I've been getting for years. And I'm going to take this step in this direction. But yeah, there's a lot of, it's very interesting because so many times it can be loss of community and a loss of a way of life that you've always known. I mean, there's a lot of things that are losses within that because you just can't engage in the same way with so many of these people. And they're always trying to subtly bring you back. And it's just like, if you can't just love me for who I am, where I'm at, then I'm just going to have to, love you from afar. I think what broke my heart the most is I had some really close relationships in my life throughout where I could see that they knew, but their families were so entrenched so deeply, so generationally, they couldn't stand the thought of walking away and being outside of that. And so they stayed. And I was just like, yeah. So thank you for all of that. And I think it's just so important to where you're able to get to that point where you're able to really realize, oh, this is who I am. This is what's authentic to me. Feels in alignment. I don't have that angst anymore. My curiosity is welcome here. I'm supposed to continue to learn, evolve, and grow. I'm never supposed to have the idea that I've arrived, because I have a sneaky suspicion that God is up there going, what have you done? What is happening here? And this idea for me, I've really come into this. God shows up for all of us. If you choose, for me, I've stayed with God just shows up in a completely different way than I was taught for me. And God can take on many iterations, and there are many iterations of God in all kinds of faith spaces. And all those people get to that in a way that's aligned and authentic with them. And instead of saying, what my way or the highway, how about welcoming in all these different ways that we can meet God in all the different ways that are possible. And so when people, and where my curiosity and my learning and my evolving and my growing is welcome. And all the parts of me that I was created with, whether it's my heart, my soul, my vagina, or my clitoris, which no one told me I had until I was in my early 30s. So there's that whole piece of my existence that I'm like, sometimes you just got to laugh about things. But I mean, there was like this deciding by humans that you can only know pieces and parts of this when I believe our bodies were made with all these things that were meant to be known about and educated about and talked about openly and lovingly and kindly and in a welcoming way. And like to have the realization pleasure is a good thing and it's good for my health and it's not bad and it's not evil. It doesn't make me dirty. I mean, there's just so many other pieces and iterations of that when you can get to that. Oh, okay. I think I finally understand how it is I'm supposed to exist in the world. And yeah. So yeah, I mean, I think there's so many layers to that, which leads us to, accepting the layered aspects of yourself. Talk to me about your layers journey.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. You brought up pleasure. Thank you for that. Cause I forgot to bring that up. And that's such an important piece of it. Mm-hmm. A lot of my layers has been accepting my humanity, because humanity was a very bad thing to be. Oh, yeah. But we're definitely human. And I don't know how to love myself if I don't love the fact that I'm a human. Yeah. Another layer on a physical level is it's good to be in a body. Yeah. Like a lot of the time our body, like it feels like we've been in conflict, or at least my experiences. I felt like I was in conflict with my body. Yeah. And it's like, oh, it's so good to be in a body. And like when you can, one of the modalities in nonlinear movement is pleasure practice. It's just, can you notice what feels good? And it doesn't what does your hair feel like on your cheek? Is your t-shirt soft? Does that feel good on you? Like, what does the ground under your feet feel like? Like noticing those subtleties and just realizing, oh my gosh, it's so good to be in a body, regardless of chronic pain, regardless of all these other things, right? It is so good to be in a body. And when you create more space for that, I find that pleasure increases. And that is everything, because I've had my own journey with pleasure and with, my sexuality and how I show up in that space. And that is a whole other piece of it. And that level of wellness. And then understanding and being okay with layers of healing. Right? Sometimes we address a layer and it feels like one step forward, two steps back, or two steps forward, one step back, whatever the phrase is. And it's okay that you need to take a step back, because you're worth it. Yeah. You're worth slowing down, right? Like, and I think for me, like knowing that there's layers of healing, layers of recovery, layers of acceptance.
Yeah.
And that, I think that is the work. I think that is the, like, we've said that, there's not a destination that you're arriving at other than yourself. And I think that that is the work. It really is the journey and not the destination. Again, the cliches. And being okay with that. And sometimes I don't feel okay with that.
Yeah.
And that is also wholeness work. Wholeness work is bringing all of yourself. Sometimes I will find myself in tears and being like, I thought I was over this. And it's like, ooh, it's not about over. It's about deeper.
That's so good. Ooh, I like that so much. Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I mean, and you said something that I think that it's so important too, that we are raised with this idea in these spaces that our bodies are against us and not for us. My body is for me. She gives me clues to let me know when I need her attention. So we talk so horribly, especially as women, about our bodies. Oh, my health is failing. Oh, my body won't work anymore. She's screaming for help. She just needs you to tend to her. And that complete switch in thinking for me. I mean, people that are listening to this now that knew me 10, 15 years ago, I'm like, who is that? I mean, honestly, like it's really been a huge switch in my thinking and how I say things and in the framework I put them in. But I learned like, oh no, she's sending me clues. Emotions are not good or bad. They're clues. They're letting you know what needs to be tended to, what needs your energy. And so being able to see it that way, continuing with the curiosity. And I think going back to the liminality, I'm going to borrow that word, that goes so succinctly with layers, because layers, it means embracing all the parts, the gray. It's not an exact science. It ebbs and flows. Things are going to be uncovered and recovered and uncovered again. And it's being willing to stay curious in that space when they come up, rather than, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening to me again. Oh my gosh, I can't believe my body is doing this again. It's like, I wonder what's happening today that brought that up. And I think you said something earlier, and it reminded me to come back to it. We treat narratives and thoughts and our preconceived notions of what we think people are thinking as truths. And we don't stop to consider, is that actually true? What evidence do I have of that truth? Or is that simply something I've convinced myself is true? I mean, my husband and I have it, and he's really good at like, are you telling yourself stories? I mean, literally, he will say that to me. And I will say, what kind of story you got going on in your head about that? It feels like we need to unpack a little more of that. And to have that language, even like we didn't even have that language 7-8 years ago with each other. And, to have that language now, but to allow all of that. I mean, for us to realize how expansive we are and what we're actually capable when we stop living in fear of messing up, of being wrong, of doing wrong, of like, oh my gosh, if I do this, is there going to be room for me over here? No, I am designed to live the most authentic, whole, loving, kind, empathetic, and accountable life, because I think we get a weird relationship with accountability when you come up with these spaces, because accountability and discipline get really messed up with each other. And it's that accountability is taking action in my own life. And like, you just can't expect things to change. You've got to be an active participant in that. And so I think I had to relearn what accountability meant and change and reframe. I'm curious, is that something that you've had to work through too?
Yeah, I would actually say that for me, accountability and the discipline piece as well, those are both actively being worked through right now for me, because I still get that anxious feeling in my chest, right? And accountability, though, for myself, the recovery piece has looked like, well, what could it look like? Could accountability look like I am making sure that I'm kind to myself. I am making sure that I'm gentle with myself, because I'm with you. You know, when I make mistakes, I will beat myself up about it internally. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have known. I'm like, that's literally not how a mistake works. Like, if you knew, you wouldn't have done it.
Exactly.
That's literally what makes it a mistake. And so working through that on a nervous system level, like, okay, what is that feeling? What is that feeling holding in my body? Can I release that? Can I move in a way that lets that be acknowledged? Can I breathe into it? And letting that feeling, you know, I agree with you. Our feelings are clues. They're ways back to ourselves. So let your feelings show you how to work through things. And so that for me is a recovery piece right now. And it's one of those things that I kind of had to just like set down for a minute and just be okay with like, I don't have this worked out. I don't have it figured out. And then, you know, more recently, having more space, having more capacity to start to feel into some of those harder emotions. They feel very embodied. I still remember, gosh, in church, when we'd talk about discipline or we'd talk about accountability, it's like, how do I make myself feel safe in the presence of accountability or in the presence of discipline? It's some stuff.
It really is some stuff. And I think too, you brought up an important point. And my therapist reminded me this. And every once in a while, she'd be like, I'm very check it off. Look at what I've done. I'm doing good oriented. Like, I've really had to unpack that. And so she would every once in a while with me say, make sure as you're doing these, you've got these steps and you're putting these processes in place that they don't become a checklist item. They're still actively working for you. And also, you don't have to be healing 24 hours a day. You have not failed if you need to give yourself a rest and a break. She goes, the rest and the break aren't just from, okay, it's Sunday. I'm not going to do my cardio or lift my weights today. I'm going to give my body rest. It's resting your brain. She's like, I want you to go have fun this weekend. Not because it's good for your cortisol or good for your serotonin levels, or I want you to just go have fun for the sake of having fun. I was just like, that's not productive. It was like something I'm still learning and growing into, but it's that giving yourself a break of like, that thing. We're going to put that on the shelf. That's not me. And learning the difference between that's not me stuffing it or ignoring it or having shame or fear around it. That's me simply recognizing where my capacity is and that I need to walk this piece out so I can show up fully and ready, feeling safe and ready in that space later. So also learning the difference between those things. So I had a big fear of like, I can't stuff anything anymore. My body can't carry it. And it's like, you're letting, and then being reminded that's fear driving you. We need to, and so fear's not driving the car anymore. And so I think, it is. And that's, I think, where I like this layers piece became such a pivotal part of my journey. And being like, I don't live in this tunnel vision. There's only space for one of these things and everything else gets shoved aside. I live in a much more open space and I'm capable of carrying more, I can be both grateful and scared at the same time. I can be both grateful and know that something needs to change, because another thing that happens a lot in these spaces is what I call weaponized gratitude, where it's like, just like, well, you've got this and you have that. And you're the first female intern. You should be thankful. And I'm like, yes, I am. No one said I wasn't. Thanks for assuming that I'm not thankful just because I see space for, something to be better too. So in living out F.E.E.L, finding empowerment, embracing layers, talk to me about what the difference that has made in your life with your relationship with yourself first and then also with other people?
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a good question. I mean, for me, it has changed the way I experience myself. Like I am not constantly trying to assess what is acceptable and what is unacceptable.
Oh, wow.
It's just what is. It's just what's present. And now I can decide what I do with that, right? Like one of my favorite exercises that I walk students through is start to take inventory with what you're showing up with. Almost like you're picking things up off of a shelf. Look at them, be curious about them, and then you can set them back down. Like you actually don't have to, like what you were saying, you don't have to do something with everything right now. You know, like just because you have huge capacity, doesn't mean you can just like do everything at once. Right. And so for me, it is that embracing of the both and. I can be this and also this. I can do that and also need rest, right? I can, we're complex creatures and we have a lot to bring. And so for me, it has changed the way I experience myself. And it has changed the way I create space for myself. It's changed the way I feel guilty or not guilty about setting boundaries. The script has flipped on that. I used to feel guilty about setting boundaries. Now I feel guilty for not setting them. Very different, right? Or even self-care. I don't see a magnesium bath at the end of a long day as selfish. I see it as essential. It's the script flips, I think. And that is the difference between living for yourself and living for others. Yeah. And, back to that, fawn piece, back to the people pleasing piece, how it's changed for myself or for others, is it actually allows me to let people in more because it's pulling back that mask of what I think people want to see and just being like, this is what it is. And that authenticity, that genuineness is the truth of who I am. Not, I'm trying to like, I feel like we almost, or at least myself, I used to try to entertain. I used to be like, yes, let me give you a good like experience, leave your Yelp review, and it better be 4.5 stars or I'm going to beat myself up for 2 weeks about it. Right. Yes. Like very different experiences. And then people get to experience me differently. And I don't leave those interactions feeling weighed down and burdened. And again, I'm not perfect all the time. We all still have our neural pathways that are being loved on. But, I'm not in those thought patterns. I'm not thinking about others like, oh my gosh, I should have said this and I said this, or I should have, right? And the difference is, I think, giving myself permission to follow up with people. Like you were talking about telling yourself a story. I use those words too. I will straight up be like, hey, you said this, I said this. I'm afraid that you actually experienced it like this. Is that true? And being curious about other people's experience, because like we get caught up in how we think people experienced us, but you can just fact check. Yeah. Just like, hey, I'm just curious. Did this happen? And like, I've never heard people say, oh my gosh, totally. I've like never heard people say that. And if it does, like, if it creates an opening, it opens the door for more conversation. If that relationship is really like, I really value you, I want to lean into this a little bit. Is that okay? Yeah. And if they have something to share, now you have more information. It goes back to accepting those mistakes. If you had that information, never would have done what you did. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it's that, I think, for years I wore performing well like a badge of honor. And so releasing that, and also those stories, going back to the stories, I had a situation last week, and what you said about the follow-up reminded me of this. It was something where it's like, this conversation happened. I think I better follow up with these two and make sure, because I really think I had this conversation with them. I feel like I did. And my husband's like, I want you to sit with that for a minute. He's like, first, what'd your therapist say about that? I'm like, well, and then he's like, I'm going to challenge you. He's like, don't you think you have the kind of relationship where if there was an issue, they would come back to you to talk to you about that? And I'm like, yeah, probably. He's like, so maybe sit with that a little longer to make sure you're not just following an old narrative or an old habit, because I was the over-explaining champion of the world. I could justify to save my life, because I just had to convince you that it was okay and that I was all right. And so I think, those all those little narratives that run inside our heads. But yeah, and it's all about how we state it and how we present ourselves, because I think, the signs of being willing to be a good listener are those follow-up things. It's like, especially if we feel like, I was kind of irritable in that moment. I'm not sure that got delivered with the intent behind it in my heart. I'm going to go back and be like, just checking in. What did that sound like to you when I said that? And having them repeat it back to you, I'm like, okay, great. Or, okay, well, this is what I was hoping, so I think there's a lot of power in that too.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And yeah, that fact check, that I want to see, actually, did you perceive me the way I perceived me? Because most of the time, probably not. But your nervous system could be like, oh, I was feeling this way, so I feel like they felt this way too.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's okay. I think feeling for myself, I kind of felt like a ticking time bomb for so long that now I'm like, oh my gosh, did you feel that experience of the intensity of what I feel? It's almost like I can be afraid of that personally. And you don't always have to be, it's like, hey, I just want to know. And then sometimes you're like, that is me spinning a story. I know it's spinning a story. I'm going to go sit with myself and have a little time out. And once that timeout's over, I'm going to see if I can let it go.
Yeah. Yeah. Good stuff. Such good stuff. All right. We are down to the rapid fire, and we talked about this earlier. Now you're going to get a chance to speak to this. Name 5 activities that nourish you.
Ooh, so good. I love nourishing activities. I love a nature walk, a casual nature walk. I'm not trying to break a sweat. I'm trying to stroll. Yeah. I love a book. Give me a book. Give me a blanket. Give me a warm cup of tea. I love my cats. They are everything. I want to pet my cat and hang out. I love a bath. Give me a warm bath. It is so good. And I love somatic exercises. I love gentle, lazy movements that are not ambitious and just letting my nervous system unwind.
So good. All right. 5 words on how you want to feel the next 6 months.
6 months. I want to feel grounded. I want to feel empowered. I want to feel stable. I want to feel stable. I want to feel excited. And I want to feel, hopeful. Not that I am not those things, but I want to lean into those things more.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that leaning into piece. So good. All right. This will all be on our resources page at embracinglayers.com, but share with people right now where they can find you, follow you, learn if they're curious about the somatics piece, things, how people can learn about that.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram. I'm pretty sure it's at Carter Kellyanne. I should know that. I
It
have
is.
a website.
I've got it pulled up right now. It is actually it's Carter at Carter Kellyanne. Exactly.
I nailed it. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a website that is functioning. It's kellycartersomatics.com.
Nice.
Also, you can just email me. If you want to talk somatics, you can email me. I'm pretty sure it's kellycartersomatics@gmail.com.
Okay.
But I would also, those are how you can get in contact with me.
Yeah.
I would also, there's a lot of really great somatic educators in the space. One of my favorites is the Workout Witch. I'm currently taking her certification course for somatic exercises that I keep talking about. She's the one that was really my way in.
Okay.
I would also recommend Michaela Boehm. She is the founder of Nonlinear Movement, and she does classes for free online a couple times a month. And so if you are wanting to, dig into some gentle somatic practices, I personally love that one. But there's all kinds of great trauma-informed stuff out in the world right now. So I would say explore and see what resonates for you. For some people, it's breath work. For some people, it's movement. For some people, it's meditation. For some of us, it's a little bit of everything. So I think dig in, because it's such a beautiful way to get back to yourself.
Oh, that's such a great way to wrap that up. Such a beautiful way to get back to yourself. Thanks so much. I knew this was going to be such a great conversation. I'm so glad that we were able to connect and do this. It's fun to watch your journey. I think it's just refreshing and a reminder of what's possible. And I think that we need more of that. And it's so important to hear people of all ages having that experience. I mean, you're the same age as my daughters. And so I get a very motherly response when I think about that, but also too, just to let, 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, wherever you are, 70s, 80s, teens, if you're feeling like these things are for you, trust that nudge and take on that. Be chronically curious. That's not, and if somebody's trying to tell you that's wrong, don't listen to that. Trust that it's there for you. It will serve you well if you lean into that. So thank you so much for being with me today. I appreciate it. Listeners, take a look at all these resources. And again, take good care of yourselves, be chronically curious, lean in, and really trust that when you listen to yourself, what is best for you. And don't let anyone dissuade you from that. All right. Take care, and we'll see you next time here on the F.E.E.L Podcast.
Hello, and thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the F.E.E.L Podcast. If you would like more information on how you can apply these talking points that I share with our guests in each episode to your own life, really utilize this F.E.E.L framework, go to embracinglayers.com, fill out our contact form, and let's set up a free 30-minute consultation to talk about how you can start living your most authentic, organic, healthy, F.E.E.L-fueled life. Thanks again for being with us today. We'll be back to you soon with another episode here on the F.E.E.L Podcast.